I believe that God has placed him here. That's biblical. The Bible says he raises up leaders and he brings them down, right? So I believe that God has him here for just this time.
That's MAGA Mike and his wife right there. And I'm Ben Mycelis from the MeidasTouch Network. What was that? I want to hear from the Suburban Women Problem. I know you love that show here on the MeidasTouch Network. Jasmine Clark, Amanda Weinstein, and Rachel Vinman on their take as suburban women about Mike Johnson, MAGA Mike. Play the clip.
We have our new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who has on video blamed mass shootings on feminism and Roe v. Wade, because 98% or so of mass shooters are men, which must be women's fault, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just on so many levels.
He is a piece of work. I just, and everything, I was writing a Substack post on the day he was it Wednesday? The day he was elected. And the more I read, the more upset I got. It was jarring, to say the least.
We had this long battle where they pushed back against Jim Jordan and all these other people because of their extremism, only to elect or select another very extreme person just with a less known name. So this guy is extreme, but not bombastic and doesn't have to do it all in front of the cameras all the time. And so no one really knew who he was. But I think it's important, especially for those who live in those swing districts or those districts where there are Republicans that are in the hot seat right now and they're sweating bullets and trying to figure out and walk that line. It's important to make sure that those Republicans feel the effects, the consequence of selecting an extreme MAGA Republican as the Speaker of the House. And I really hope that people are paying attention. I really do hope that a lot of people do know what this guy stands for, because there's a reason why they basically elected Jim Jordan with a different name. This is the reason why.
Well, yeah, actually what I said was, Scalise was not hard enough. He was too soft. Jim Jordan was too rough around the edges, way too outspoken, too known. But then it's like, I called it the Goldilocks zone. Mike Johnson is just right. No, he's hard, but no one knows him. And it was like the sweet spot for them, so they could vote for him thinking that no one would know. So everyone, I want you to understand the assignment. It is to make sure that everyone knows who this man is. And to all of our female listeners, which we think we have quite a few, I just want to highlight one thing that Speaker Johnson has said in the past. It is the duty of all women to produce an able-bodied worker, so that, this is some real gaslighting, like abuser language here, so that the Republicans aren't forced to cut Social Security and Medicare. Okay? It is on you, ladies. It is your responsibility. Men do bad things because of us. It is our fault that there are mass shootings because of women. And the Republicans will have no choice other than to cut these programs if we do not produce able-bodied workers into the workforce.
As if the able-bodied worker comes out of the placenta, and that's where the able-bodied comes. It's not our K-12 education system. It's not early childhood education. It's not our healthcare university. It's purely the placenta. And that's how we get that able-bodied worker.
It's like almost immediate, I think, like
it's part of the push
or something. They just like horses. They just stand on their own after like an hour and we're like, we're done. Okay. I mean, your work here is done. Just move on to the next, go back to the fields.
Right. It's like from labor, delivery, labor and delivery to child labor to just labor. Like that's pretty much where they are at this point. And it really reminds me of when they were even going through this whole battle of choosing a speaker, how every single Republican that was on every single, news outlet when people would say, well, what do you say to people that say that the Republicans are in disarray and there's chaos and, they're having trouble governing? And every single one would be like, well, that's Biden's fault and I would be like, what? Like, why are you even bringing up
What's
Biden?
wrong
And
with
it's
you?
the same with this guy. Everything that is wrong with the country is wrong because women won't have babies. Like, that's it. Feminism is why we have mass shootings, not because people have access to guns that they shouldn't have access to, or because people have access to all this ammunition that they shouldn't have access to, not because their background checks there's loopholes in our background check process. None of that. No, it is because women.
Or that we don't have access to mental health care. Like, I know that that's coming next. Like, great, then let's do something about it. Let's do something about mental health care in this country. Oh, well, no, never mind. We're just going to pray for their mental health.
We are spending so much time on things that we shouldn't be spending time on. We're spinning our wheels. And I think about this all the time as a mom. Like, what am I giving to my daughter? I am fighting for things that I shouldn't have to be I shouldn't have to spend my time fighting for things like basic reproductive rights and choice for her, and like environmental policies that just make sense and are in line with what we know about science and the earth. But that's what we're having to fight for instead of spending our time on making working on the environment, providing meaningful mental health care, and addressing some of the, the lingering effects of the pandemic. And, I do think that there are a lot of kids right now that are hurting and trying to figure things out. And there's a lot of other factors as well. But the whole country was held hostage by their Republicans' extremism and nonsense and chaos in Congress. And then when they said, Mike Johnson said at the end, like, a lot of people look at this and they think it's bad, but this has like been the greatest, couple weeks in our democracy. And I'm like, it is not a show. It's not a game.
It's not, right.
It's real life. And everyone, I say this all the time. Sorry, like maybe every week, but I say this to you guys also in our text chat. It's like, here we are trying to do good things in the world and trying to get people to engage in the process. And you have this whole group of people who are basically convincing people that nothing matters. Like, there's no point in voting. There's no point in like freaking vote on a Tuesday. It's not convenient. And you're like, what does it matter if you don't go vote? Because it's like these clowns are just going to go to DC and lose their mind and do whatever they want anyway. So who cares if my voice is heard? And I mean, okay, unequivocally, that is wrong. But you can see how like a less informed person could jump to that conclusion, which again is why
or exhausted.
Yeah,
like
totally.
People are just exhausted with the chaos, and then we're having to fight for things that like our founding fathers already did. Like Mike Johnson doesn't believe in the separation of church and state.
Oh my God.
We now have to fight this thing that our founding fathers tried to make clear in our Constitution and the founding of our country.
And then he just says things. He just says things that are wrong. Like, he just says like, well, you want to know what I think? What my worldview is? Go read the Bible. Which part? It was written by so many different people. Right. And every Bible scholar will tell you that over like, centuries, it was written like, over millennia. And here you are like, okay, well, like what? And again, I grew up in a town that had like grocery stores and gas stations and churches. You know why? Because no one could agree on which church to go to. So which version of Christianity is your worldview? Mm-hmm. What do you believe based on that? Because not everyone is agreement. It's just so painfully stupid and insulting.
He doesn't even understand it. He like thinks there's one view of Christianity and it's his.
Yeah.
And we're going to institute that in the government, and his view will be your view.
But I mean,
and again, we got to keep talking about it, and
we have to
vote.
Absolutely.
We have to vote next week.
Absolutely. And I think that is why it's so important to vote and not get disillusioned. I get it. Here in Georgia, we are now having to redraw our maps for the next election. A judge ruled that our maps do violate Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. If voting didn't matter, they wouldn't try so hard to
Yes,
to
yes, yes, yes.
do these things. I wouldn't violate the Voting Rights Act if I didn't think that it conveyed some type of advantage. So yes, your voice
Mhm.
actually does matter. And there are people
Yeah.
sitting in rooms right now trying to find ways to dilute your voice.
We just got news that our Secretary of State is purging voters, because that's another way we can take voters off the roll. And we just talked to Jocelyn Benson, who in Michigan, they're automatically registering voters. But in Ohio and Virginia, they're automatically unregistering voters and taking eligible voters in some cases off of the voter rolls.
Yes. So
It
it's
is
important.
exhausting.
It's exhausting, but it's important. Like, again,
It is. It's okay. We're moms. We can do things when we're
Yes.
tired. It's
Just
okay.
need an
I can
extra
push
cup
through.
of coffee.
Yes. Yes. Or in my case, oatmeal. Whatever works for you to make sure that you are fueled and ready to go, but we can do this. And so I just want to encourage everyone. Next Tuesday is election day all across the country. So anyone who's listening, you likely have an election. I don't, because I live in an unincorporated area and here it's municipal elections, but of quite a few people listening, next Tuesday, they will have an election. And so make sure you show up, and make sure not only are you showing up, but you know what you're showing up for. Do that little bit of research to get the information and know who's on the ballot and what they stand for. We don't need little Mike Johnsons running around the country being all extreme because they, knew how to be extreme but quiet.
Yeah.
So, we do definitely have to do our due diligence, but these elections are so important. It's not just about what happens every 4 years with the presidential. These elections, to me, are probably even more important than presidential elections. And I think one of the reasons why they're more important is because a lot fewer people show up. So the ones that do show up, like, your voice really, 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 it's very concentrated. There's no dilution happening right now. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. This is our last episode before the election. So it's our last chance to tell you to make sure that you and everyone you know votes this Tuesday, November 7th. So thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week on another episode of the Suburban Women Problem.